I know it's the end of a long day, so thank you so much for being here. I definitely wish we were doing this in person. It would be a lot more fun to be able to all be together. If you wouldn't mind and you're up for it, I'd love for you to turn your camera on just so I can see your smiling faces while I'm talking. But again, I understand it's the end of a long day, so do what you got to do. So thank you to PMALA for having me. As Ethan said, I've been a member for many years. I'm so happy to be able to talk with you guys tonight. Tonight, I'm going to talk about why extreme programming isn't just for engineers and how it builds better product culture. Sorry, one second. My slides are per usual being a little crazy. All right. So I was having a virtual coffee chat with a fellow PM, and we were talking about our current roles and teams. I shared with her how philosophically aligned I feel with mine about how to do software development. That might sound cheesy or like a setup for this talk, but I legitimately say this to everyone. That's how strongly I feel about it and how much I believe in it. She asked me what I meant, and I told her, for me, that alignment looks like a place that values learning and teaching others, collaboration, genuine enthusiasm for the work that we do, and deep empathy, not just for our customers, but also for one another. I love that we build software well, holding ourselves to high standards of quality, and we make those best practices available to others that we work with. I believe that the way we work is not only the right way, but the best way to build software. When I finished talking, she said, wow, your product culture sounds like a dream. What do you think makes this possible? I thought about it for a minute, and then I told her, we do XP. What's XP, she said. Extreme programming is a proven method for engineers to produce higher quality code and work better together. But what if I told you XP practices were the key to a better product culture for everyone? This conversation with my colleague is when it clicked for me that my perspective on what good product culture looks like is very much informed by having learned how to code using XP. For me, XP is something that's been a part of my career and shaped how I think about product development from day one. Before I became a product manager, I went to Dev Bootcamp to learn how to code and to increase my technical knowledge. For a minute, I almost forgot I wanted to be a PM. That's how life-changing and wonderful that program was. There at Dev Bootcamp, we learned how to code using pair programming, simple design, test-driven development, and refactoring. These practices made me fall in love with lightweight frameworks, collaboration, and simple and high-quality solutions. As I moved through my career, these things shaped how I chose to work and the tools that I tended to use. And they've helped me to create strong, effective, and happy teams. Looking back at it now, this also explains why I've always had a hard time with a lot of process, a resistance to implementing heavy frameworks, and an aversion to anything with an acronym. In this talk, I'll cover a few areas about extreme programming. First, what's XP, starting with the values and principles. Next, what's missing in product, or what's missing in XP, hint, it's product. And then I'll align a few XP practices for engineers with product practices. The goal of all of this is to give you an idea of how you can leverage some of the value of XP in your own practice with your teams. I'll say this, if you already know about XP, I'm not going to teach you anything new about it. But if you stick with me, I do think that I can show you some ways that you might consider where the boundaries of XP are. If you're new to XP, I'm also not going to be able to teach you everything about it in this session alone. But I think it's a good overview that will show you there are likely some of your own practices that fit very well within XP. For everyone here, I believe that learning about XP from a product perspective will make your teams, your collaboration, and your work even stronger. So what is extreme programming? Extreme programming is one of the agile methods. It's different in that it's lightweight, it seeks to reduce risk, and it's efficient. It focuses more on feedback and keeping customers involved throughout the project. It delivers value to customers in small iterations. It encourages change by anticipating it and accommodating for it in the process. It keeps quality high from the beginning, reducing errors and issues later. So that all seems pretty reasonable, right? So what makes it extreme? XP takes the things that are going well in Agile and asks, how can we do more of this? For example, projects that had good test suites were most successful. And we all know that tests often become a last step, a follow-up task, or aren't done at all. So how do we prioritize testing and ensure that we always write the most tests and the best tests? Test-driven development, or TDD, where tests come before implementation and drive the development of code, is the answer. Working this way ensures that your code is always passing, provides a good foundation for continued development, and it makes it easier to maintain long-term or hand it off to other teams. Another example is that projects with code reviews were the most successful. So how do we get more projects with more code reviews? Pair programming, where two developers are working on one story together, alternating writing the code or watching the code as the navigator. Now, this may actually seem extreme. Why have two people work on the same thing? Pairing means that you will always have another set of eyes on your work, which means you're always on code review and you're able to catch errors in real time. So let's start with the 5 values of XP. Values are what inform our behavior and are foundational to our understanding of XP. First is simplicity. Simplicity means, what's the simplest thing that will work? This probably sounds a lot like lean. The value in simplicity is twofold. First, we can avoid waste by only doing what's absolutely necessary. And second, it's a lot easier to maintain and support and revise code when we do it this way. Most importantly, simplicity also means addressing only the requirements you know about. We don't try to predict the future. This may seem counterintuitive since we as product managers are always looking ahead, but there's power in being able to get to the simple thing first. Next is feedback. Feedback is an essential element for growth, change, and improvement. Feedback is what drives iteration and XP at multiple levels, and it falls into 2 categories, product and process. For the product, the goal is to demonstrate software early and often, and to listen to any of the feedback so it can inform further development. This is a lot of alignment with user-centered design. For process, the team is constantly working to identify areas for improvement and to revise their practices for a project specifically. A great example of this is the retrospective, where a team talks about what they're doing, how they're working, what's going well or not so well, and what they might try to do differently. Much like product development, process development is iterative in XP2, and each week can contain different experiments for the team to try, measure, and evaluate. Kent Beck, one of the authors of Extreme Programming Explained, defined courage as effective action in the face of fear. Or simply put, courage can be telling the truth about progress and estimates or giving feedback. So often teams are in a position where they don't feel like they have the ability to call out risks or things that might be making the team less effective or things that aren't working for them. You need courage to say these things, but you do so knowing that it will make a better experience for everyone. And knowing that you're a part of a team also gives you courage because you're never working alone. You have a commitment and you've made a commitment to your team and to accept responsibility and to do the best that you can. And this takes courage too. While we stereotypically tend to think of software development as a solitary activity, at least on the engineering side, it's inherently a very communal and collaborative experience, and it requires communication to happen effectively. Communication means that you're a part of the team and everyone communicates daily with a preference for face-to-face communication, even if it's over Zoom. Part of communication is the idea that the team will work together on everything from requirements to code in order to create the best solution. And communication rituals like daily stand-up, sprint planning, and retrospectives are not just checkpoints, but are ways to drive effective and efficient collaboration. Last but not least, respect. Respect means that everyone contributes value, even if it's just enthusiasm. And this is taken verbatim from the text. I love that enthusiasm is called out so specifically here because it really reinforces the idea that everyone brings something unique and important to the team. Respect is required for effective communication, providing and accepting feedback, and collaborating on solutions together. And this extends beyond the immediate team to respecting the expertise of the customers or management respecting the team's authority over their work. Is anyone shocked by how touchy-feely all these values sound? No wonder me and all my liberal arts friends at Dev Bootcamp were totally sold on XP. So next we'll talk about the principles. Principles are what inform our actions and are derived from the values, and there's 5 in XP that I'd like to talk about. So let's again start simply. Traditionally, engineers are told to plan for the future and to design for reuse. But assume simplicity means do a good job of solving today's problem and trust your ability to add complexity in the future when you need it. XP is focused on what's important today. And with quality code and good tests, it's easy to add and modify the system later with confidence so that we can only do what's needed truly at that time. XP wants feedback early and often. The goal is to get feedback, understand it, and put the learning back into the system as quickly as possible. This happens in 2 areas, the system and the product. For the system, we leverage tests to give feedback about how the code is working in seconds or minutes instead of days, weeks, or months. We leverage pair programming to do code reviews continuously instead of doing pull requests in days or weeks. For the product, We leverage customer interviews to give feedback on how the product is meeting their needs or solving problems in days or weeks instead of months or years. And ideally, we're doing this continuously. So now that you have feedback, how do we implement the change? Incrementally. It's difficult to make big changes or change many things at once. Incremental change assumes that any problem solved is solved with a series of the smallest changes that can make a difference, meaning you make a small change, evaluate it, and then make another. These baby steps can happen at any time and at any level and are what drive iteration and learning to change through continuous improvement. Working this way gives confidence in the changes you're making, knowing that at any point, if you're wrong, it's a small step back to get to solid ground. Embrace change. It's going to happen, no matter how much you plan or how much research you do, and definitely no matter how many roadmaps someone asks you to make. Moving forward without adapting to change is only setting your team up for failure. I often joke that working like this is kind of like a lifelong commitment to a non-attachment practice. It's very challenging and it's very rewarding, and it's always forcing you to grow. Learning to adapt to change is a key part of XP. There's an idea of mutual benefit where your team is constantly trying to balance what's best for the current state of the project versus the future, the customer needs against the business needs, and it takes a certain amount of mental flexibility to do this. So while change can tend to throw teams for a loop, one of the biggest benefits of working in XP is that you're set up to handle change successfully. All of the simple design, incremental change, and rapid feedback will help you onboard whatever change comes your way in a really manageable way, as well as a measurable one. Quality work. Everyone wants to be proud of the work that they do and know that it contributes value. Working in XP creates confidence about not only the quality of the code that you're producing, but the value of it to customers. This may seem obvious, but this is the goal of doing all of this. Doing good work feels good. A great way to help your team feel proud of what they're doing is to share it with other teams through demos, customer feedback, sharing stories from user testing, and other key metrics that you're tracking towards. So with all of that, what's missing in XP? When XP was originally developed, there were no product managers by name. So there's a gap when we consider XP practices in a modern product organization. In the original XP setup, there was someone called a customer who provides requirements, sets priorities, and steers the project. Sound familiar? Product managers have always had a role in XP, even if we weren't called that explicitly. However, in the early versions of XP, the customer as a non-expert PM who developers leveraged to make decisions proved to be insufficient over time. This person was an actual customer. So while they could answer questions about priorities and requirements, they weren't really thinking about the product holistically. They also weren't thinking about how to bring together the various areas of expertise to collaborate on a solution. That's not to say these teams weren't successful. They were, so much so that we're still finding value in these practices 25 years later. But the relationship between the customer and engineering was execution focused, feature focused, and it falls short in its potential for collaboration. To get the most out of collaboration, you need to empower your teams wholly, and here's how. We've already seen that lean and user-centered design share some XP characteristics, but here's the difference. While both methodologies create opportunities for a high amount of collaboration, I've still seen so many product teams silo activities away from engineering and sometimes even design. And while XP creates an environment of more collaborative engineers, it's not enough if true product leadership is left out. If we think of XP, Lean, and UCD as a meta collaboration on the methodology level of the relationship between engineering, product, and design, we can start to see how the symbiotic relationship drives the powerful and effective work of product teams. When we think of XP, we think of iteration happening at multiple levels and intervals. Usually we look to engineering first, iteration that occurs at the code and system level. But there are iterations that can happen at the product level before code ever gets written. These product iterations can create even more value for those engineering focused iterations and for the organization at large, especially when all product teams are involved. And this is good product culture, deep collaboration between engineering, product, and design to develop better solutions and enjoy the process doing it. So let's talk through a few of the engineering practices in XP and how they align with product practices. There are likely some parts of your own practice that will fit nicely into an XP view of product management. And if not, I'll show you how to start incorporating these practices into your work without taking your team on a full-on XP transformation. I want to start with a practice that speaks to how to work together and sets the tone and the foundation for your entire product development process. In XP, there's pair programming, where you have two developers working on one story at a time. One person is the driver, the person who has their hands on their keyboard, writing the code. The other person is the navigator, talking through what the pair is doing and being the second set of eyes on the code. When I was at Dev Bootcamp, this meant that we sat at the same desk and shared one monitor and one keyboard between the two of us. We paired 100% of the time, about 8 hours a day, and it taught me a lot. I was the person in school who hated group projects because I always ended up being the person doing everything. I'm sure that's something a lot of you in this room have experienced, and I think it's probably a core requirement for becoming a product manager. When I heard about paired programming, I was worried that it would be a similar experience, and I was really frustrated. Wouldn't I go farther and learn faster if I just did it myself? I can confidently say that I could not have been more wrong. Pair programming changed my life. For the first time, I got to experience the joy of truly collaborating with someone, learning from them and with them, and going beyond my personal limits. And this changed my entire perspective on how to work with someone, how to build effective teams, and how to achieve seemingly impossible tasks. So it makes a lot of sense that the product squad concept resonates so strongly with me. This is the idea that in order to create the best possible solutions, you need all part of your development team, engineering, design, and product, present for as much of the development process as possible. Handing these things off from one team or department to the next is a surefire way to slow things down, create communication overhead, and end up with a solution that doesn't actually work. The product squad is responsible for ensuring that we get to a good solution that is valuable, usable, feasible, and viable. Just like pair programming, it's genuine collaboration, and it's just a lot more fun to work that way. So how do these two concepts work together? Pair programming creates an engineering culture that desires collaboration, requires participation, and creates better communication among team members. And in order to have your whole team participate in the full product development process, it requires that engineering gives up a little time on the pair programming side, but the benefits are huge. When context about the customer problems, business constraints, design ideas, and technical limitations are known and shared by everyone on the team, you can move faster. You also generate more ideas, better ideas, because you're getting them from all areas of your team. And last but certainly not least, working this way creates empowered teams, ones that are comfortable and confident moving ahead with ideas because they have everything in front of them to do so. And this is where the magic really happens. So where can you start? I don't expect you to become an XP evangelist at your company and try to convince your engineering teams that they should do pair programming. Though if you think they'd be interested, we should definitely talk more later. But if you can get them to pair with you, product and design at some key moments outside of your normal stand-up, your planning or your retro meetings, you can really get some of the value in those moments too. Have them join a session where you present opportunities and evaluate the value and complexity of pursuing them. Have them listen in a customer interview. Share a summary of your user interviews with them and get their input on next steps. Invite them into your part of the product development process to empower them to know more and do more. So now that you've got your team in place, figuring out what problems to solve and what opportunities are out there, where do you start? When there's so much to do, how do you begin? For XP, it's simple. Simple design is a just enough design policy, referring to code design, not visual design. And extra complexity is removed as it's found. So there's always a push to get to the simplest version. Developers refer to this as YAGNI, Y-A-G-N-I, or you ain't gonna need it. On the product side, when we think about simple design, we think MVP, minimum viable product. We're always asking ourselves, what's the least we can do to get to a given outcome, to get something in front of a customer, to answer a question, validate or invalidate an assumption. In practice, this looks like building out what you know you need at the time until it's validated that something else is needed. At Dev Bootcamp for our final project, we built an app called Local Beat that mapped out live music events, embedded the artist's top song, and linked you to be able to buy tickets. Our team was really into live music and wanted to make it easier for people to find and attend shows happening near them. We had tons of ideas for how we could build out functionality to share events, invite friends, find restaurants nearby, or figure out the best way to get there. But we hadn't validated any of these ideas, and each one was an additional integration and totally different functionality. We also didn't know the value of any of these things yet, other than that we were excited about them. So with simple design and our MVP in mind, not to mention only having 48 hours to build it, we were able to keep our code focused and our features critical. This commitment to simple design and the ability to be ruthless in the pursuit of achieving an outcome is hard work. It takes thoughtful collaboration and understanding of the problem you're solving, the value the solution adds, who your users are to be able to do it. I believe this is one of the main reasons why product management is called a discipline, because it is hard work. And it's 100% the responsibility of the product manager to lead this effort. But when combined with the simple design practices of XP, your engineering team becomes a co-conspirator in your quest to do the least and get the most. To start leveraging this superpower, ask your engineers to give feedback on an MVP definition and challenge one another to see how much further you can break it down. I guarantee they will share ideas that will change your way of thinking about how to structure your MVP and will make you a better product manager for it. So we've got our team, we know where to start. Now, how do we get it out into the world? XP has a practice of small releases, the idea that you should deliver quickly and early by having short iterations and then get to new versions based on feedback. It's this commitment to continuous learning and continuous improvement that's the hallmark of XP. This probably doesn't sound really extreme in the current development culture, but you'd be surprised how many companies are still doing weeks-long releases or even quarterly. For product, the way that we get feedback is through user interviews. While that may sound formal, it doesn't have to be. There are 3 things needed to make a user interview happen. 1, a hypothesis about the problem you're solving, the solution you're providing, and/or the value you're delivering. 2, a solution to share with users that can be as high fidelity as a clickable prototype or as low fidelity as sketches. And 3, a commitment to asking open-ended questions that seek to validate or invalidate your hypothesis. We're not out here seeking confirmation, but information. When you work closely with your engineering team to set up a good cadence of small releases and user interviews, you'll see rapid improvement in the quality of your work. While development teams can see the benefit firsthand and pretty immediately, I've also seen this combination win stakeholders over too. When your business counterparts can clearly see and understand what you're trying to find out in interviews and then see it tested in real time through a small release, they become really invested in the process because of the great results that they can see. Everybody loves to feel like they're putting that scientific method that we all learned in high school to work. I've seen this work best when engineers either attend the user interviews first and are able to ask questions themselves, or when they listen in and watch them later. There's so much value in having your engineers present to hear user feedback firsthand. Every person hears something different and something of value and something specific to their perspective. So to not take full advantage of this opportunity is a mistake. When it works best, engineers will come out of interviews with new ideas of things that could add value and will become personally invested in making those things happen. And with small releases, you'll be able to. Once you get things going, you're going to want to go fast. In XP, we go fast, but keep quality high and confidence high through continuous integration. We do this through automated builds and tests, so the system is checked every time a task is completed. This sets the team up for continuous deployment, reducing time to release and getting features in front of customers for feedback quickly. I've seen teams who start leveraging continuous integration go from releasing once every 2 or 3 weeks because it would take a full day of testing before and after every release, to being able to release multiple times a day without blinking an eye. This meant that we could get features in front of customers, and if we got new feedback and wanted to change something, add something, or fix something, it was low effort to do so, and we got to do it a lot more often. XP assumes that you get customer feedback with each very fast release, but what if you could get it before you spent any time coding? Continuous discovery allows product squads to ideate, get feedback, and iterate, often with no-code solutions to ensure customer value before building. This doesn't mean that you won't need more feedback once the feature is complete, but it can greatly increase the confidence that we're on the right track with less cost and less development time. I have worked with clients that are 100% confident in their solutions and want to jump right into development so we can get it into customers' hands fast. But when we took the time to do discovery, we learned that the solution wasn't actually going to solve the problem, and it would have taken us months and a lot of time and money to be able to only learn that later. While they were disappointed that we weren't able to start building right away, they were really happy to not have wasted all that time and money on something that wasn't going to move the needle. And where continuous discovery really starts to flex its power is once you get to dual track development. Unlike product development processes that have a finite discovery phase and then move into a delivery phase, Continuous discovery proposes that you are always discovering, always doing customer interviews, always looking to validate hypotheses, problem solutions, and looking for new opportunities. When we do this, we create a constant stream of work that is being validated and ready to go into development. So we lose no time transitioning between discovery and delivery phases. And we're always focused on the most important problem to solve and the most valuable opportunity in front of us. And this is where the flywheel is really spinning. Continuous discovery paired with continuous integration is one of the most powerful examples of the way XP aligned with product practices can increase the strength of the product process and lifecycle. While you may not be able to make the necessary changes to your team's infrastructure or test suite to make continuous integration possible, you can set your team up for success by committing to continuous discovery, creating a consistent stream of validated, valuable work, and including your product squad in the process so you are all empowered and collaborating, working towards the same goal. To get started with continuous discovery, make sure you're talking with your customers every week, several a week if you can. Include your product squad. Capture the insights and opportunities from the interviews and publish them to your team and your stakeholders. Get people excited about what we can learn through constant interaction and conversation with our users. And always be looking ahead to the next, and always be looking ahead so you're creating opportunities and for your development team to drive real value and impact. While the role of a product manager as we know it today was not in existence when XP came to be, the values, principles, and practices are still incredibly relevant now. XP focuses on simplicity, feedback, iteration, change, and quality. There are a lot of similarities to lean and user-centered design, but none of these methodologies on their own empower full teams in the most effective way. XP, Lean, and UCD work best when combined and are a macro representation of the collaboration that happens between engineering, product, and design teams. When we work this way and our product organizations become stronger than the sum of its parts, we can accomplish some really amazing things. There are a few places you can start leveraging the symbiotic power of XP and product practices. Building out your product squad, considering engineering design as part of your MVP conversations, getting everyone in on user interviews, and moving to dual track development through continuous discovery. And if you decide to try any of these out, I'd love to hear about it, and I'm happy to talk with you more about it anytime. I'm passionate about getting teams into that wonderful state of collaborative flow and bringing this straightforward, lightweight, respectful, and collaborative approach to product management to them. This way of working creates strong, effective, and happy teams that produce high quality and high value work that everyone can be proud of. And that's what makes good product culture. People who have a way of working well together, building awesome stuff, and having fun doing it. XP opened my eyes to this possibility and gave me a way of thinking that shaped my own product practice, and it's become my favorite thing to share with teams. Thank you so much for your time. I'm really happy to be able to talk about this with all of you, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or talk with me directly anytime about all things product.